My brother-in-law tried to evict me out of spite. 6 months later, he was broke, divorced, facing criminal charges, and working at a Jiffy Lube. And I made it happen. All because he tried to throw me out of a house my sister owned. Here's how I destroyed him, using nothing but facts, fraud records, and his own cheating behind. Phil thought calling me worthless trash would break me. Instead, it gave me the motivation to take everything he had. His marriage, his money, his reputation, his freedom, gone. And the best part? He did most of the work himself. Let me tell you how one eviction notice became the biggest mistake of his life. "Get out of my house, you worthless piece of trash. You have 30 days before I throw your stuff on the curb." Phil slammed the eviction notice down on my kitchen table so hard that my coffee mug jumped. Hot liquid spilled everywhere. His face was purple with rage as he screamed at me in the modest rental house in Riverside, California that I'd called home for 3 years. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, from pure anger. He had no idea what he'd just unleashed. 6 months later, Phil would be standing in divorce court, watching his wife, my sister Emma, walk away with half of everything he owned. The prenup he thought protected him? Worthless thanks to evidence of his cheating that I'd been collecting for months. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Jessica Martinez. I'm 28, a senior financial analyst, and I just destroyed the most arrogant man I've ever known using his own crimes against him. 2 years ago, I was living quietly in a charming house that my sister Emma owned. The rent was cheap, $1,800 for 3 bedrooms, because family helps family, right? Emma had been married to Phil Castellano for 4 years. On paper, he looked perfect. Regional sales manager at Morrison Construction, BMW in the driveway, big house in an expensive neighborhood, the kind of guy who wore suits everywhere and bragged about his golf game. What he really was? A control freak who treated my sister like his servant and me like garbage. Phil hated that I lived in his rental property, even though Emma owned it before they met. He'd make nasty comments about me being a charity case. He constantly pushed Emma to kick me out. The red flags were everywhere. I watched him scream at teenage cashiers over tiny mistakes. He'd snap his fingers at waitresses like they were dogs. When Emma started becoming quieter and more nervous, I knew something was wrong. As women, we're taught to keep peace in the family. I should have spoken up sooner. 3 months ago, everything changed. I'd been doing freelance bookkeeping to pay off student loans. Emma mentioned that Phil's company needed help with their quarterly reports. Phil agreed to hire me, but only because he could pay me less than a real employee. "Just don't embarrass me," he warned. "These are important clients." Big mistake, Phil. Huge mistake. Morrison Construction specialized in office buildings and expensive homes. Phil managed about $12 million in contracts. He acted like the company's golden boy, always bragging about his success. On my 3rd day, I found out the truth. Phil had been stealing, padding expense reports, claiming personal dinners as business meals. A $340 dinner at an expensive restaurant with someone named Victoria Torres was listed as client entertainment. But when I checked the client database, no Victoria Torres existed. That's when I started digging deeper. Over 2 weeks, I uncovered a pattern of fraud that made me sick. Phil was stealing through fake expenses, inflated bills, and kickbacks. He'd created fake companies that existed only on paper. The total? Over $180,000 stolen in 18 months. But the money wasn't even the worst part. Those business dinners with mysterious clients? Phil was having affairs, multiple affairs. Victoria Torres was a 24-year-old architectural assistant. There was also Amanda Rivera, a real estate agent, and Sarah Kim, a marketing consultant. He was using stolen company money to cheat on my sister. I felt like throwing up. Emma had been struggling to get pregnant. Phil kept saying they couldn't afford fertility treatments. Meanwhile, he was spending thousands on hotel rooms and fancy dinners with other women. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. I put together a detailed report of Phil's crimes. Bank records, fake invoices, a timeline of theft. I also started secretly gathering evidence of his affairs, not for revenge yet, but to protect Emma when she found out. I thought I was just protecting my sister. I didn't know I was building the weapon that would destroy Phil completely. On a Tuesday morning, I requested a meeting with Phil's boss, Patricia Morrison. She was the company founder's daughter, a tough woman who'd built their reputation on honesty and quality. "Phil speaks very highly of your work," Patricia said from her corner office. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. Miss Morrison, I need to show you something that's going to be very hard to hear. For 40 minutes, I walked her through Phil's crimes. The fake reports, the shell companies, the pattern of theft hiding in plain sight. Patricia's face got darker with each piece of evidence. Jesus, she whispered when I finished. How long has this been going on? At least 18 months. This is just what I could prove with the records I had. Patricia stared out the window for a long time. Finally, she spoke. You understand this will destroy Phil's career? Not just here, but everywhere in construction. This kind of fraud, he'll never work in this industry again. I nodded. I knew exactly what I was doing. I have a sister who's married to Phil. This isn't easy for me, but I became a CPA to report financial crimes when I find them. I can't stay quiet. What I didn't tell her was that Phil's destruction was just beginning. Patricia launched an investigation immediately. Within 48 hours, they'd confirmed everything I reported and found even more fraud. Phil was fired that Friday. Security walked him out while his co-workers watched. Morrison Construction also filed criminal charges. But Phil couldn't accept responsibility for his actions. Instead of telling Emma the truth about why he was fired, Phil lied. He told her I had made up false accusations because I was jealous of their success. Your sister is a lying, vindictive monster, he told Emma. She destroyed my career because she's jealous that I'm successful and she's living in a rental like a loser. Emma believed him. When she confronted me, I tried to explain, but Phil had already poisoned her mind against me. That's when Phil made the biggest mistake of his life. I want her out of our house, Phil told Emma. If she's going to destroy my career, she doesn't get to live in our property anymore. 3 days later, Phil showed up at my door with that eviction notice, screaming about how I was worthless trash. He thought he was punishing me. Actually, he was signing his own death warrant. California law requires 30 days notice for eviction. Phil gave me notice on the 18th, meaning I had until the 18th of the next month. He was following the law, but he'd also given me a full month to plan his complete destruction. And I had exactly the ammunition I needed. That same day, I called Emma. We met at our usual coffee shop in downtown Riverside. She was cold and distant, still believing Phil's lies. Emma, I said, sliding a manila envelope across the table, before you kick me out, you need to see what Phil has really been doing. Jess, I don't want to hear more lies about my husband. These aren't lies, these are facts. After you see what's in that envelope, you'll understand why Phil was really fired. Emma opened the envelope and her world fell apart. Inside were Phil's fake expense reports, bank statements proving theft, and photos I'd found on his laptop when I was helping with their computer problems. Photos of Phil with Victoria, Amanda, and Sarah. Photos that made it clear what he was doing with these women. Hotel receipts charged to company cards. Text messages where Phil promised these women he was going to leave Emma soon. Emma read everything in complete silence, her face getting paler with each page. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Jess. How long have you known?" "I suspected for months. I only got proof at Morrison. Emma, he's been stealing money and using it to cheat on you. While you've been trying to have a baby, he's been doing this." Emma started crying. Quiet, heartbroken sobs that made my chest hurt. My strong, beautiful sister broken by a man who didn't deserve her. That's when I made her an offer that would change both our lives. "Emma, I know this hurts, but I also know you're stronger than Phil thinks. If you want to make him pay for what he's done, I can help you." Through her tears, Emma looked up at me. For the first time in years, I saw the fire that used to define her before Phil put it out. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward and lowered my voice. "Phil thinks he's going to throw me out and embarrass our family. He thinks he can steal from his company, cheat on his wife, and face no consequences. But he forgot something important." "What's that?" "I'm not just a financial analyst. I'm really, really good at finding information people don't want found, and Phil has been very sloppy covering his tracks." Emma wiped her eyes and sat up straighter. "Tell me what you need me to do." For 3 weeks, Emma and I worked together gathering more evidence. Emma had access to his home computer, his phone when he showered, his personal documents. We found he'd been using their joint savings, money for their future children, to fund his cheating. We found dating profiles where Phil claimed to be recently divorced. We discovered he'd been telling his affairs that Emma was just a roommate. He'd even promised Victoria he would marry her once he got rid of the dead weight. The man who called me worthless had just given us everything we needed to destroy him. But the most damaging evidence came from Phil's own stupidity. He'd been using his work laptop for personal emails, including detailed plans with Amanda for a weekend in San Francisco, paid for with stolen money. The same weekend Emma thought he was at a work conference. Phil's arrogance had created a perfect trail of his own destruction. April 18th, my supposed eviction date, Phil showed up with a moving truck and 2 guys to physically remove my stuff. "Time's up, monster," he said, standing in my doorway with his arms crossed. "I told you to be out today." I smiled and stepped aside. "Actually, Phil, I think you're going to want to see something before you start moving furniture." I handed him a manila envelope identical to the one I'd given Emma. "What the heck is this?" "It's a copy of everything Emma's divorce attorney will be filing in court tomorrow morning. Adultery, financial fraud, breach of duty. Oh, and Phil, that prenup you made Emma sign? It has a clause that cancels the whole thing if either person commits adultery." Phil's face went from red to white to green as he flipped through the pages. "You can't… Where did you get these photos?" "From your laptop, the one you asked me to fix last month when it was running slow. Did you know that deleting files doesn't actually remove them? Basic computer forensics, really." That's when Phil completely lost it. "You piece of crap! You can't do this! I'll sue you!" "You'll what, Phil? Sue me for giving evidence of your crimes to the right people? Sue me for helping my sister discover her husband is a thief and a serial cheater?" Phil lunged toward me, his face twisted with rage. But Emma chose that moment to walk through the front door, having parked around the corner like we planned. The look on Phil's face when he saw Emma was priceless. "Hello, Phil," Emma said calmly. "I think we need to talk." For 20 minutes, Emma confronted Phil with every piece of evidence we'd gathered. The theft, the affairs, the lies about his job, how he'd manipulated her into believing I was the problem. Phil tried to deny everything, then make excuses, then finally threats. "You'll never get half of anything," he screamed at Emma. "That prenup protects me." Emma smiled, a cold, satisfied smile I'd never seen before. "Actually, Phil, I had a very interesting conversation with my attorney yesterday. Turns out, when you commit adultery and financial fraud, prenups become worthless. Funny how that works." The realization hit Phil like a punch to the gut. No, that's not. The house is mine." "Was yours," Emma corrected. Past tense. My attorney already filed for divorce and requested immediate asset freezing pending the fraud investigation. "Oh, and Phil, the district attorney's office called yesterday. They're very interested in your creative bookkeeping." Phil stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish. But I don't have anywhere to go." Emma pointed to the moving truck in my driveway. "Good thing you brought a truck. You have 30 minutes to pack whatever clothes you need. Everything else stays until the court decides how to divide assets." It was the most beautiful moment of my life. Phil left that day with 2 suitcases and his BMW, which Emma's attorney would later force him to give up when it was revealed he'd used stolen money for the down payment. But the best part was still coming. 2 weeks later, Phil was arrested at his temporary apartment in a cheap extended stay motel. The charges: grand theft, wire fraud, money laundering, and filing false tax returns. Morrison Construction's investigation had uncovered even more crimes, bringing his total theft to over $200,000. The local news picked up the story because Morrison Construction was well known locally. Phil's mugshot appeared on the 6 o'clock news with the headline, "Local Construction Manager Arrested for Embezzlement." His entire social circle saw him exposed as a criminal. But Phil's ultimate humiliation came during the divorce proceedings. Emma's attorney discovered that Phil had been using community property, money that belonged to both Emma and him, to fund his affairs. Under California law, this was breach of fiduciary duty, which meant Emma was entitled to be paid back for every dollar Phil had stolen from their marriage to cheat on her. The final settlement was devastating for Phil. Emma got the big house, $750,000 value, half of Phil's retirement money, $85,000, the rental house where I lived, which she immediately gave to me, and $125,000 in cash as payback for Phil's betrayal. Phil was left with his remaining retirement balance, his clothes, and about $15,000 the court let him keep for basic living expenses. Oh, and a criminal record that made him unemployable in construction. 6 months after Phil tried to evict me, I sat in the courtroom watching Emma sign the final divorce papers. Phil, wearing a cheap suit instead of his usual expensive clothes, looked like a broken man. As we walked out of the courthouse, Emma turned to me. "Jess, I owe you an apology, and probably my entire future." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "You're my sister. Family protects family." But the story doesn't end there. 3 months later, Phil violated his plea agreement by trying to start a construction business under a fake name. He was arrested again and sentenced to 18 months in state prison. Victoria, Amanda, and Sarah all testified against him during his trial, revealing how he'd lied about his marriage status and used stolen money to finance their relationships. His reputation was so destroyed that even his old golf buddies avoided him. The man who called me worthless trash lost everything because he underestimated the wrong woman. Today, Emma lives in Phil's former dream house with her new boyfriend, Michael, a genuinely kind man who treats her like the queen she is. They're planning a wedding for next summer, and Emma has finally started the fertility treatments Phil said they couldn't afford. I own my grandmother's house completely now. No rent, no landlord, totally mine. I've also started my own forensic accounting business, specializing in uncovering financial fraud in divorce cases. Business is booming. Turns out there are a lot of Phil Castellanos out there, and their wives deserve to know the truth. As for Phil, last I heard, he was working at a Jiffy Lube in Bakersfield, living in a studio apartment and driving a beat-up Honda. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad about destroying Phil's life so completely. The answer is simple. Phil destroyed his own life through his choices. I just made sure he faced the consequences. I learned something important through this experience. Being underestimated is actually a superpower. Phil thought I was just a quiet financial analyst living in my sister's rental house. He saw someone he could intimidate and dismiss. What he didn't see was someone with the skills, resources, and determination to expose every lie he'd ever told. Phil called me worthless, but in the end, his own worthlessness brought him down. He was a thief, a liar, a cheater, and a manipulator who thought his expensive suits made him untouchable. He forgot that numbers don't lie, digital evidence doesn't disappear, and underestimating your opponent is the fastest way to lose everything. Phil was right about one thing. One of us was definitely worthless in this story. It just wasn't me. The best part? Phil's downfall was entirely his own fault. All I did was shine a light on what he was already doing. His greed, his arrogance, and his complete inability to see anyone as an equal. Those were the weapons that destroyed him. Women, we don't have to accept being pushed around by men who think we're too weak to fight back. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone destroy themselves while you document every stupid decision they make. And the next time someone tries to evict me from my own life, well, let's just say I've gotten very good at playing the long game. Oh, and guess who just applied for a job at my forensic accounting firm last week? Phil didn't recognize my name on the HR review team. I personally made sure his application went straight to the rejection pile. Some mistakes you never stop paying for. I'd love to hear your stories of standing up to bullies and coming out on top. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they could walk all over you? How did you prove them wrong? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories of justice served cold.